just want to say that I'm so happy this day has come. This whole process has taken about a year and a half, and we're very close to, I'm hoping, a happy ending, and that Sugar Loaf will be designated a historic district. And with that, I'm going to turn the room over to Tabitha O'Connell from the State Historic Preservation Office and her partner, Chelsea Towers, also from SHPO. They drove all the way down from Albany. Thank you.
All right, hi everyone. As Lydia said, I'm Tabitha O'Connell. I work in a Survey and National Register unit at SHPO, and Chelsea Towers is the unit supervisor. So today I'm here to explain to you, what is a historic district, what does it mean for you, and we'll give you a brief summary of the National Register nomination, explaining why Sugar Loaf is being nominated to the National Register. So we are a part of the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation. This is what we do. And then our particular division is the Division for Historic Preservation, also known as New York State Historic Preservation Office, or SHPO. We offer programs that help individuals and communities achieve the social, economic, and environmental benefits associated with historic preservation. So part of the way we do that is through the National Register program. The National Register of Historic Places is the official list of historic properties that are recognized as significant in American history in a variety of different areas. The National Register was established by the National Historic Preservation Act, which was signed into law in 1966. It was meant to acknowledge the value of historic resources to our heritage and to help protect them from state and federal development projects. Then the New York State Register was created in 1980, and today our office administers both programs together. And then the National Park Service has the final word on the National Register. And all the 50 states, New York State leads the way with National Register listings. We have over 6,000 designated properties. These properties range from high-style modern buildings like the Guggenheim Museum to like roadside attractions like the Big Duck in Long Island.
That one.
So today we're here to talk about what is a historic district, and that is in contrast to listing a building individually, like the two we just saw. A district is a collection of buildings that gets listed together because they are significant for their relationships to each other. They're significant as a whole, not just individually. So here's some examples of districts. This one is in Harlem. So there can, districts might be one street in a city or multiple blocks of a city. Or here's a rural district. So it can be, it can range from all different types of properties. So next part is, what does being in a National Register district mean to all of you who own property there? So the important thing to note up front is National Register designation is honorary only. It does not result in any material changes to how you use your building or what you can do with it. It doesn't restrict you from, doing whatever you want. Selling it, painting it, demolishing it, gutting it, no restrictions of that nature. It also doesn't create any additional review. We don't need to look at and approve what you might want to do with your building. You're free to continue doing whatever you want. The benefits that National Register listing brings are honoring the community's history, protecting properties from government action. So if the government, wants to use money to demolish a building, that's when we take a look at that and kind of give our opinion. National Register listing also provides municipalities and nonprofits with access to grants, which I'll talk about a little more in a second, and helps promote the appreciation of historic resources in our state. So the grants, again, are for municipalities or nonprofits for properties that they own. And specifically, New York State has the Environmental Protection Fund grant, which is used or can be used for projects that improve, protect, preserve, rehabilitate, restore, or purchase historic properties. So nonprofits or municipalities, if they own property in the district, they can apply for this grant for work on that building. So some FAQs. Just to reiterate, no listing doesn't mean you can't make changes to your building. It doesn't restrict at all what you can do with it. And you are certainly not required to open your building to the public. There's nothing like that. It's still your private property that you have say over. Will it affect local taxes or zoning? No, it doesn't make any direct changes in that regard. And then finally, can you object to having your property listed? The answer is yes. For a historic district, the listing is only prevented if a majority of owners object. So otherwise, if an individual wants to object, we will take note of that. You can send a letter to our office. We'll certainly add it to the file. But you cannot individually opt out. You can't say, I want you to change the boundary and draw my house out. That's not how it works. But if you, object for any reason, you can certainly let us know of that. We'll all wait and take questions for everything at the end. So now, why are we nominating Sugar Loaf? So first, let's talk about what's the boundary of the nomination. This shows the boundary. We are nominating the historic core of the hamlet. At the southern end is the Jesse Wood farmhouse. At the kind of northwestern end, a former Knapp family house, one of the oldest in the district. And then at the northeast end is the former school building. So we drew this boundary based on historic maps of the district. So this is 1859 and 1875, and you can see the 1875 in particular. This boundary that's on this map of what they then called Sugar Loaf Village is basically the same boundary we drew today. It's the area where the buildings were concentrated and where the area that was considered like the core of the Sugar Loaf hamlet. So Sugar Loaf developed in the 18th century as a community center for the surrounding agricultural region and as a stopping place for travelers who were passing through on Kings Highway. So as you saw on the map, there were farms kind of at the edges of the district, but then the community center was, like the businesses were centered on the intersection of Pine Hill Road and Kings Highway. And they included a blacksmith, stores, and here's the old hotel that still stands today. Originally it had a livery stable attached. So Sugar Loaf further developed during the 19th century. This grand church was constructed in 1852, and also in the 1850s a creamery was started. And then in the 1860s a railroad was built through the east edge of what's going to be the district. And then the milk and butter from the creamery was shipped out on the railroad. And that was a large part of the economy, agriculture, and specifically dairy farming. So this is a map of 1903. You can see it looks quite the same as the 1875 map, and most of these buildings are still here today. In the first half of the 20th century, the economy suffered as large dairy businesses kind of outcompeted smaller local ones. The Sugar Loaf Creamery closed in the 1930s. The school was closed in the 1930s. The hotel also. And in service. And this depot depicted here was the original depot that was built in Sugar Loaf. That one was dismantled after the passenger service stopped.
Excuse me, Tabitha, the
Yes.
air is fine, a little loud.
Oh, gotcha, okay.
Don't do it, serious.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so this depot was dismantled, but the depot you have today was the East Chester Depot, and it was, it was built by the same railroad line at the same time, so it basically looks identical, and that one was moved in the 1970s. But yeah, basically by the 1930s and 40s was a rough time for the local economy with the Depression and with the closure of these businesses. Things kind of took a turn. However, when Walter Cannon moved in the 1960s, he started his barn cider business, selling material from old dismantled barns from the region, and he got the idea to form a community of craftspeople. He saw Sugar Loaf as a perfect location for that, and he got in touch with Jarvis Boone, a wood carver, who moved in as well, and then they were able to successfully draw other craftspeople to Sugar Loaf with all different specialties, candle maker, different leather workers, all different kinds of crafts. And their project was very successful. There are so many newspaper articles in the 1970s and 80s, this is just a few, talking about the revitalization of Sugar Loaf, how special it was as this community of craftspeople. You see these ads for art shows and craft fairs. It really had a resurgence at that point, and just it's still known for that today. And so because of its early history as this rural hamlet that grew up in the region, and then also this later history as this craft village that was intentionally created here and saw success, it is significant to the history of the region, and that's why we're nominating it for the State and National Registers. So, questions? Yes.
Hi. Early on in the process, I was worried about the use of the word hamlet to describe just the historic district, but it looks here like you're referring to the historic district as more the core of the hamlet, the larger hamlet. Do I have that right?
Yeah, correct. The name of the district is Sugar Loaf Historic District, but it's not, we're not saying it's the entire hamlet.
Okay, because I'm with the Historical Society, and we were really concerned about that initially in the studies done by Mr. Larson, he was referring to that area as a hamlet, but it won't be referred to that way? I know it's just a hamlet.
Yeah, no, we're not trying to set the boundaries of the hamlet, we're just setting the boundaries of the historic district. Yeah. Anyone else have questions about National Register or?
Do you have the PowerPoint or a brochure, something that includes the benefits and the do's and don'ts, what they do? Do you have?
Yeah, I
something
can
for us?
share the PowerPoint with Lydia, and then she can share it with you. Or if you signed in and gave your email, I can email it to you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
How many historic districts are there now in New York State that are registered?
I'm going to see, Chelsea, do you have any idea of the number?
So there are over 6,500 listings. Of those, you can assume approximately 40% are historic districts, 40%, as opposed to individual listings. And they range in size, so the largest historic district we have currently is just over 3,000 buildings. The smallest historic district we have is 3 buildings.
Yes.
Since many of these buildings are mixed use, commercial, could you talk perhaps about the tax credits that are available for that kind of use?
Yes, so there is a commercial tax credit. This is a federal government program, and it has a requirement that you spend essentially more than the building's value. So that makes it trickier for smaller property owners for a substantial rehab, so you have to be putting a lot of money in to qualify for that program.
We are in no way tax professionals. There is a formula that they use at the National Park Service to determine whether or not your project qualifies as a substantial rehabilitation project. So we always recommend that you engage a tax professional if that is something that you are looking to do, but we have all the information. We can help you get started with the process. It does funnel through our office. So we're a great resource to start a commercial tax credit project if that's something you're interested in.
Yes.
Who are our neighbors that are historic hamlets, and what is their rate of success? How are they doing in the negatives? In Orange County?
Yeah, like Ocean and Warwick. Yeah, I mean, I don't have like statistics memorized or anything, but we have not heard of any issues there. I think it's been nothing but positive as far as the feedback we've gotten. Yes. Yeah.
I have a question about outline, so you're not writing a course, and my property is considered Sugar Loaf Village, but it's outside of the hamlet, so to say. So do individual property owners try to get to be part of this district, or is it just a non-issue?
Yeah, so at this point, we draw the boundary based on the research and analysis. So the boundary is set at this point, but if you are interested in your property being considered individually for the National Register, that's certainly an option because, we can list these big districts, we can also list an individual building. So if you're interested in that, I can definitely give you more information on how to pursue that process.
Speaking to that question and to the map here, I'm aware of Widow Drive being part of the hamlet and the village and the commercial district. In fact, the farm here, my great-great-great-grandfather built, which is now the Sullivan Center. I don't understand why it's excluded. And I know that's, you didn't do that, you make that determination yourself, but if you could jump back to that from that other map. Why it was excluded, yet the wetland, which I love personally, or that huge field is included, as well as that field from where we're all standing, Looker's right of the railroad track, that elongated field. I don't understand why that is part of the historic district, but Widow Drive, which had many businesses that were actually very, very important to this main drag, why it is excluded.
Yeah, so the reason, that there's that long extension there on the right and then at the bottom, we draw the boundary to match the current tax parcels. So, for example, we want to put this building in, the tax parcel goes all the way over there. So we're following the tax parcel boundary, but it's just to include this building, or for this one, this building. So it's not a deliberate, we're trying to include this land, it's just, that's what the tax parcel is. And again, Chelsea, if you go back to the maps, if we're following very closely, what was defined historically as Sugar Loaf Village. What did they drew this map with these limits because that was historically, what they saw as the core of the village. And so that is in large part what the boundary is based on.
But just so that you know, that village map is actually rendering from after the town of Chester was incorporated, but the hamlet of Sugar Loaf predates the town of Chester.
Right.
You're aware of this?
Yeah. But then, somebody in 1875, the map company went through and drew maps, this is from an atlas of Orange County, so they looked through and they drew one map of the town of Chester, and then they drew these smaller maps, kind of zooming in on individual communities. So they looked at, what's there and what's worth drawing this close-up map of, and this is the area that they picked out. Yes.
I have two questions. One, where is 1406 Kings Highway in relationship to this? It would be across the street from the post office.
Yeah, so
Maybe
Chelsea, can you go to the
earlier
other
map.
map? So 1406 is this, I believe. This is the preschool building, you can kind of see it, and then the house on that property.
Thank you, okay.
Yeah.
And then my second question is, when you talked about the tax credit, is that different than the grant program? So the grant program, not-for-profit can apply for regardless of the size of the project?
Yes, the grant program is totally different requirements.
Let's just say that someone looking at this map did some research and has some information that perhaps wasn't available to the folks that were putting this together. Who would they contact and how available are the folks that determined this? Because I imagine it wasn't a meeny, meeny, miny, mo thing. It was something that was thought through. But maybe they didn't have all the information, as Jay brought up and some others have mentioned. How would we amend that or go about a process of having a conversation about that if somebody wanted to do that?
Yeah, so there is a process available to amend a nomination. We've done ones where we later expand the boundary based on new information.
Okay.
And so, you know, right now.
It's best to get it approved and then to do an amendment.
Yeah,
after the
but
fact.
so, yeah, if, you know,
Okay.
if you're interested in that, if you want to present information to our office, you can get in touch with me and I'll, you know, review that information and figure out, you know, what makes sense.
Thank you.
Yes. Anyone else have
Yeah, I do.
questions? Yes.
I'm not exactly sure I understand the definition that you're talking about as far as the historical district. Up there, on the video you had a little while ago, I believe the blue house used to be Ezra Decker's. And that's a brand new house. His historic house was torn down, I don't know, 10 years ago, totally wiped off the map. And a brand new house, you know, I'm sure it was approved through the Architectural Review Board, but it doesn't look anything like it did 10 years ago. And so I'm wondering, it's part of, I guess, what you would call this historic district. So how do you, I don't know if you call it justified, but how do you explain what a historic district is when you've got several houses in this village that have changed drastically?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So in the nomination, we include a list of every building within that boundary, and we have a designation of each building as contributing or non-contributing. So a contributing building, it's basically saying it contributes to the significance of the district. Like, this is a building that is important historically to the district. Non-contributing buildings are for those ones that are interspersed with the historical ones, so we don't want to just cut them out of the boundary. So we draw them into the boundary, but we say this is non-contributing. It was built in 2015 or 2009. It's not historic. It falls in the boundary, but it's not important to the history. So that's how we deal with those cases.
And a building like that falls under all the same criteria as a building that you do deem historic. In other words, has all the same regulations and hoops to jump through to either stay in or stay out.
Well, again, so there really aren't any hoops for anyone to jump through, because you know, we give you this listing, but it's an honorary listing. It doesn't, you aren't required to do anything differently with your property. So you know, both the contributing and the non-contributing buildings are in the district boundary, but our office isn't knocking on your door saying, hey, what are you doing to your building, for any of them. So you know, it won't cause you any difference either way. Yes.
The non-contributing buildings such as this one that Clay mentioned that actually was built afterward after raising the actual historic building, do the owners enjoy the same benefits as those people who actually own a fee that historical buildings?
No, so for, you know, for like the commercial tax credit program or the grant program, non-contributing buildings are not eligible for those. Yes.
How do we find out what's contributing and non-contributing buildings?
So we have an online information system where once the nomination is approved, you'll be able to view it and see that building list. Right now, because it's not approved yet, it isn't there, but I can share a copy with you. Yes.
So if you're one of those there's kind of a tax credit that is going to be available for certain types of work that would keep the building historic.
Yes.
Is that my understanding?
Yes, so
Can you speak a
there,
little more about that?
yeah, so there, our office, the New York State has a historic homeowner tax credit program. However, Sugar Loaf is not eligible for that program because it's administered based on the median income level of your census tract. So Sugar Loaf is not eligible for the homeowner tax credit, but the commercial tax credit from federal government could be a possibility for buildings that are in the district and contributing.
And how does that work?
Yeah,
flesh
so
out just a little bit?
Yeah, so the commercial program is done through our office. You submit an application, but the first requirement is you have to meet the definition of a substantial rehabilitation. So that there's some calculation where it's the adjusted value of your property minus depreciation. Basically, they want you to spend more on the rehab than your property value to be a substantial rehabilitation and qualify for that program. So if you meet those requirements, then you submit an application to our office. It's a pretty simple application. Mainly, we need to certify, yes, this is a property in the historic district, and then we need to review and approve the work that you want to do. And that's done by our technical service unit, and they, might come back to you and say, hey, you're wanting to replace all your historic windows, what if you repair them instead? So there's going to be some back and forth conversations, and then they approve the work, then you get the work done, and then you submit proof that you have done the work in accordance to what you said you would do. Then, you sign off and send it to the National Park Service. Then you get a letter that you can submit with your taxes to get that tax credit on that work.
Couple points of clarification. So by commercial, we mean income producing. So if your property is used as an B&B, that's a commercial use. If it's rental property, that's a commercial use. But like Airbnb doesn't qualify, or those types of temporary commercial uses. If you use it as your home office, it's a very fine line, but usually does not qualify. So think income producing kind of realm. And the commercial tax credit program is entirely approved or denied by the feds, by the National Park Service. So we facilitate the applications, we take them in, we process them, we give strong guidance about what they will or won't approve, but it's up to them to approve it. And as Tabitha was mentioned earlier, whereas this is an honorary designation where the government's not going to be knocking on your door telling you what you can and can't do. If you use the tax credit money, there are very strict standards that you do need to adhere by for that program to qualify. So like replacing all your windows with vinyl, if they're wood original, would not pass the tax credit program.
What about just preserving old trees? I mean, everyone walks down a road and everyone's thrilled with, oh, these mature trees, this is so beautiful. Well, it takes a lot of money to keep those mature trees thriving. Is that factoring at all? Not that I'm even in the district at this point, but.
Yeah, so the Division of Historic Preservation doesn't really have any programs for that. I don't know if Chelsea, there's anything you're aware of where we could direct.
DEC runs some programs. Believe it or not, the Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, have like a historic tree registry. But I don't know if there's any funding available for maintenance of them, but definitely not through our office.
You mentioned municipalities and nonprofits being eligible
To apply for grants.
grants. Is a municipality just a town or village, or is it also county?
no obligation to come to us. We'll, just follow the Architectural Review Board as you have in the past, but we have no review for that.
As long as you're using your own funds.
I am.
Yep, so if you were to get a grant from the
I
state,
won't.
or,
For all those reasons, she just articulated the last 50 minutes. I would have to hire a lawyer to understand some of that.
Yes.
So if you have a home or a structure in the historic district and it may or may not qualify as, or would have as an individual listing, if you do a major renovation and it is not done according to the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines, it wouldn't affect your eligibility?
The qualification can be affected by changes. If there's an individual property that gets listed for its architecture and someone does a total rehab that changes everything about it, that could mean we would delist it from the National Register. In a district, if one building changes, that's not going to affect the status of the district as a whole. There could be a point where if you have a contributing building and you make significant changes, we might say, okay, the building has lost all its historic features, we're going to change it to non-contributing. But we also are not actively out there looking at these things. If it comes to our attention, we can change, do the delisting or make a note on the file. This one's now non-contributing, but we aren't actively monitoring it or anything to look out for those things.
But that might make a difference if you were going to apply for tax credit?
Yes, if the time that you apply, we look at the building and see this has had so many changes, it's no longer a contributing building, then that would make you not eligible for the tax credit.
One quick thing, in 2007, when our Historical Society tried to do exactly this, we were turned down because of the fact that it was sort of a disparate village with a lot of non-traditional buildings and later built buildings in it. And then thankfully, it sounds like you guys have changed the rules, which is a wonderful thing. I was told that the length of time, or the age of a building, now it doesn't have to be quite as old to be in that district. And what I wanted to ask about is the station there. A friend of mine owned it back then in 08, and 08. No, this was in 02. And he wanted to get designation for it, but it was turned down, which seemed nonsensical to me because it's still an old building and it was brought here in 72. So that building would qualify now.
Yeah, so I can shed some light on that. So typically, to be eligible for the National Register, a building or buildings in a district have to be 50 years old or older. And so, looking at Sugar Loaf back in 2007, that craft village era was less than 50 years ago. So that's just the passage of time is what kind of has allowed us, okay, 50 years on, we have that historical, length of time, buffer, that's what I was looking for, to look back and say, okay, yes, this was a significant development. So that is, that's kind of the only thing that changed. Just time went on, now it's older. And with the depot, often a building being moved from its original location makes it not eligible for the National Register. So this being the East Chester Depot that was moved here, looking at it then back in the 2000s, this was fairly recently moved here, that's going to be a hard sell for National Register. But now at this point, it was moved over 50 years ago. So again, that's kind of the main difference. Just giving it enough time so that we can say, okay, yes, we can tell this definitely was historically significant. Yes.
In less than 2 years, when the 2026 Sugar Loaf will be, as far as craft village, will be 50 years old. Will that change anything then?
No, like once we, if, again, like I was talking about, if someone wants to do an amendment and talk about that more recent history, that would be an option at some point to add that information to the nomination. But right now, we kind of determine something called the period of significance. So it's, when was this place historically significant?
What kind of significance?
The period of significance. So it's like the range of years, what era was this significant? So right now we've ended it right at the 50-year mark in 1974. If someone wants to do an amendment later and say, let's bring that forward, it continued to be significant after 1974, that would be an option. But for now, we're kind of restricted to making it that 50-year mark.
Could you expand a little bit on some of the misconceptions? We do have one resident telling me about some of the, she read an article, he read an article, and just about taxes, about assess rates, government intervention, local registry versus state, national.
Yeah, so, a lot of municipalities have a local preservation commission that can create local historic districts. And local historic districts tend to come with a lot of regulations because they're trying to make sure it stays historic. So they are the ones who will have you do reviews, like, oh, you want to build something onto your building, you want to demolish it, you have to come before us and get our approval. And that is not at all what we do, because we simply, look at this place, say, yes, this is historic, and put it on the National Register list. But we aren't trying to, we aren't doing anything to try to keep it that way it is. So we have no review, no oversight. What was the other thing you brought up?
Assessment.
Oh, yes.
Interference.
Yes, so again, that National Register listing doesn't change any of that in itself, because it's simply us
maybe the only concern was that the properties would become so much more valuable, assessments would rise, and our taxes would increase as well. And I think that has happened everywhere, not just in the historic district. In Sugar Loaf, when Jarvis Boone and Walter Cannon came in, they paid not much more than about $6,000 for each one of those houses. And of course, today there were well over 100,000, I would estimate. So the taxes have grown. But I think if you really want to make a business in the community, it helps it tremendously. And the taxes, sure, they go up, but so should the revenue of the businesses that are in the buildings. And the ability to, in the future, say if you want to retire, to sell the structure. We bought a house in 1970 in Sugar Loaf. It's right on here, down the bottom right, built in the 1830s, and we paid only $25,000 for it. And my wife had a business there. It's been a business, but we lived in it as well, and we like that idea about Sugar Loaf. Crafts people, business people, able to have businesses, say on the first floor, and raise their families on the second, possibly the third floor. We have some very successful examples of that. One of the most obvious is my sister's closet, the Duke family. The Sharps opened her business about 50 years ago, less than 50 years ago, and it was a successful business. They raised a large family in that house, and many members of that family have been quite successful in their careers, and she just closed the business less than a year ago now. She's getting on her years, and she wants to do things in the retirement fund. And so that's another thing too. I mean, if Sugar Loaf, if the crafts community didn't emerge, Sugar Loaf real estate probably wouldn't be very, very good, and you wouldn't make much of a profit if you wanted to sell your property when you got older and wanted to retire from it. So I think overall, it's been good, and for Warwick too, it has preserved the architecture of the central business district too. The buildings have not been modified for the most part. A few have been. Almost all of them are owned by people who put a great deal of effort into rehabilitating and restoring the buildings. So I'm altogether, I was very positive about it when we first went forward with the proposal in 1981. And I think it's worked out very, in 1984, it's worked out very well.
Next steps, Tabitha, what is your rollout?
Yeah, so the next step is the nomination goes before the State Review Board, which is a group of people that meets quarterly to review these nominations. They will take a vote to approve, and by the time it gets to the State Review Board, we don't take it to the State Review Board unless we know the board will approve it. So at the September 12th meeting, they will very likely approve it. That will mean it's listed on the New York State Register. The next step after that is then for us to send the nomination on to the National Park Service in DC, and then they review and approve. And at that point, it's listed on the National Register as well.
And being transparent, don't make it isn't for the residents to vote.
So it's not a vote, but you can object. If you would like to object to the district being listed, you can send a letter to our office, and I can give you contact information if you're interested in that. Yes?
How long does it take for the national parks to approve the National Registry?
Yeah,
And New York to approve the State Registry?
So the State Registry, it gets approved the same day, so that'll be September 12th. As soon as the board votes, it's on the state register. And then we send it on to the National Park Service shortly after, and then they take about 2 months before they have finished their review and approve. Yes?
From your description of the process at the state review board, it sounds as if it's essentially approved already. It sounds like it's just no form of gesture and the decision's been made. Am I misreading that?
So, you know, we, the staff in the unit, don't take something to the state review board unless we're sure it qualifies. But it is, you know, we send it to the board reads the nomination. At the meeting, they ask any questions or express any concerns that they have. Sometimes they vote to approve it with conditions. So that means they'll say, we're approving this, but we need you to make these changes. So, you know, it's not completely just, you know, everything sails past them. You know, they do read the nominations and they engage with them and give us feedback if they have any. But, you know, if we didn't think something met the qualifications, we wouldn't be presenting it to them.
Thank you.
Once the district has been established, at that point, does that help to fast track, say, federal grants or state grants for things like infrastructure?
So no, it doesn't have any bearing on that. If there are infrastructure projects, state or federally funded, we review those for everything, whether it's on a property in a district or not. But there isn't any special fast track or anything.
I'm sorry, Tabitha. Town historian Chester, Clif Patrick, has been very helpful and involved from the get-go. Would you like to say something? Your views?
Well, I'm be glad to help anybody as any questions or wants any information. I'm happy to dig in for it and assist you in any way I can towards promoting the history of Sugar Loaf and Chester in general.
Tabitha, where is this documents located so people can have access if they want to review?
Yeah, so right, it's going to be posted on our website in advance of the review board meeting, so very soon it will be up on our website. And I can send the link to Lydia.
Great. So people can access that to Lydia.
Yes, exactly.
So how do we get the markers for the historic district designation? Is that separate from what you do? We have to, I guess, get grants or something for the markers?
Yeah, we don't, you know, automatically give out markers. It would be something you would have to get separately. But I can give you the contact info for the people who do that.
Are they required to be very specific, or are they up to the community to create?
Yeah, no, there aren't requirements. There are, you know, some standard companies that have, you know, kind of their standard markers that they will provide, but, you know, you could make your own. We don't set any requirements for that.
Gotcha. Thanks.
Last round. Say your piece. So on behalf of everybody in Sugar Loaf, I'd like to thank Tabitha and Chelsea. Incredible job. Thank you guys. Any questions? So the thing of information. Clif Patrick is a wonderful point person, correct? You're okay with that?
Sure.
Okay, we're not going to hound you with any information, but Lydia will have the information. Any questions available can go to Lydia or forward it to you,
Yeah,
correct?
sounds good, yeah.
And you'll let us know the path
Yes,
and the schedule.
yes.
Any questions? Tim, you've been very quiet. No questions? Good. Please have some donuts because I can't take them home. Please have some whatever's there. And thank